You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show.
The 70% of people out there listening to the show today are going to need some level of care. It doesn't necessarily mean that 70% are going to end up in a nursing home, but 70% of people will need some assistance out there. The biggest fear is running out of money for the retiree, but what we see is not enough people spend enough of their money.
Cris prides himself in what matters to you. This is the Rite Retirement Show.
Hi there. Welcome to the Rite Retirement Show. I'm Louann Fulmar. With me today is Cris Wallace. He's president of WG Financial Group. Also with us from the firm is Graham Bauer. And they are both here to help us talk about what pre-retirees and retirees need to do to navigate the road to a secure retirement. Let me give you the phone number as we get started. It is 256-937-2010. You may call or text the word visit. You can get a complimentary discovery session. Complimentary, all right? Remember, we are on Facebook throughout the week. If anything happens with retirement news, Cris will add that on that Facebook. You can always check that out. And our motto is plan, retire, play. Boy, you're going to hear us talk about that today. Remember, this show is available on podcasts. Okay, just search for the Rite Retirement Show, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or online at wgfinancialgroup.com. So today we're going to dive into some smart saving strategies that you need to do before you retire, like maxing out your HSA accounts or mixing account types for tax perks. Plus key decisions in retirement, from Social Security timing and tax efficiency to protecting your spouse and using a bucket approach to beat market risks. So we got a lot of good stuff coming. Cris and Graham, so excited to get started. So let's do it. Let's get started.
Let's do it, Louann. I'm looking forward to this. This should be kind of a well-rounded episode where we can kind of talk about the pre-retiree on into retirement. So it should be pretty good.
Okay, yeah, love it.
I think so.
Graham,
We're a little biased though, right?
Yeah.
A little biased.
All right, then my first question, let's get into pre-retirement saving strategies. Let's talk about that and how we build our foundation for retirement.
Yeah, so I'll start us off here. I think when you're in your pre-retirement years, so let's say like 53 and on up, just start with a big picture and start thinking about, what retirement's going to look like. Shift your focus on your investments, and that might mean shifting focus to something a little bit more scaled back, especially if you're aggressive, depending on how far away from retirement you are. And then also think about things where you can maximize tax advantages and diversifying your savings across multiple tax buckets. And we'll kind of get into that as we go through today. But, most people are going to have a 401k, 403b, TSP, those types of retirement accounts. So make sure you're putting as much as you can into those. I always like to say it this way. I put enough in there to where it doesn't crimp your lifestyle, because I'm one of these guys that there is a balance between, living life and making memories. We talk about the M&M money on the show, making memories money. There is a balance there. And I don't think that you should go through life not making memories. So there's the balance there. Make sure you're doing your catch-up contributions when you're above age 50. If you're 60 to 63, make sure you're hitting those super catch-up contributions. And then when eligible, you should also be taking a look at doing maybe a Roth IRA. So I know that we run into this quite often to where somebody's modified adjusted gross income is low enough. They're below the threshold where they can make contributions, but they're not actually making contributions. So if you're eligible to do that, then by all means, make sure you're taking advantage of saving in an account where your future earnings on that account is actually tax-free in the future. I think that is great. Take advantage of, compounding. I think what I'm trying to say here is we've got interest rates that have come up. And we've seen where I think there are individuals and families out there who will say things like, well, I'm in a money market making 3.5% or 4%, and it's guaranteed. But the data shows after about 5 years, there's almost no scenario where the market doesn't beat cash. So take advantage of that compounding, get invested. And then one of the last things that I'll kind of touch on here, and then Graham, you can kind of add some comments if you want, but man, the HSA account, I don't see enough people utilizing those. I think they are kind of like the stealth retirement account that's out there. I really, really do. And if they're used properly and contributed to like you should, it really makes a difference. And I think most people listening to the show today, I think they would agree that healthcare is going to be one of their biggest expenses or largest expenses in retirement. So why not start creating that bucket today so that you have that for retirement? And here's kind of the cool thing that I think gets overlooked and not talked about enough. Under today's tax law, as long as you had a high deductible health plan and you're contributing to an HSA, you can reimburse yourself as long as you have a receipt for something that happened earlier in life. So I'll make an example. I'll be 53 in May. So let's just say I get to 63 and I want to give myself a disbursement out of the HSA. I want to take a withdrawal. And what I may want to do is reimburse myself for an expense that I took, a health insurance expense that I took at age 54. And let's just say that it was total $20,000. Maybe it was to buy whatever the case may be. I can give myself that tax-free reimbursement at age 63 for something I did at 54, as long as I can prove to the IRS that I had that expense during the time that I had an HDHP plan and HSA and I was making contributions. I can give myself a tax-free disbursement. Now, why is that important? Well, for tax reasons, maybe I'm in a position where at age 63 or 64, I don't want to raise my income anymore, so I don't want to take any out of an IRA. And I can reimburse myself for that medical expense that took place when I was 54. I can take that tax-free. Maybe I want to buy another vehicle or something along those lines. So I don't think that that's discussed enough as a strategy with the HSAs. And I just don't think enough people use them. And it's not, I don't think. It's the data's out there. Only about 10% of the population uses them. And like I said, they're kind of a stealth account out there.
Yeah. And, one thing you didn't mention, but is very worth mentioning too, is after 65, you can use an HSA for anything. You just pay the taxes if it's not a qualified medical expense. So in a sense, it kind of just becomes an IRA that can be used tax-free for medical expenses.
Right.
So, imagine that, your 401k could be used tax-free for medical expenses. That would be awesome. That'd be awesome in retirement. Mm-hmm. So I totally agree with you that, when we're talking order of operations, and this isn't going to be an order of operations episode, but, after you're getting that employer match, I think you could make a really strong argument that HSA is the next best vehicle, maybe a Roth IRA, but those would kind of be the two competing at that point. But I think it's a great vehicle. I've loved having one. The receipts thing is a great idea. It's probably kind of tough to keep up with for some people, but I would say it'd probably be most beneficial if you do have those big one-time expenses. Yeah. If you spend $4 on ibuprofen, you might not hold on to that receipt for 40 years to reimburse yourself for it. But for those bigger things, especially for the younger folks, you have a bill from a birth of a child or something, a surgery, something like that. But yeah, they're very underutilized. A lot of people, confuse them with the FSA, the flexible spending account, which is, for people that have them out there, they know it's the one that does not roll over year. So the one kind of rebuttal I've gotten before to using the HSA is, some people will say, oh, well, my health insurance through my work, it goes through payroll deduction and it doesn't get taxed anyways going through payroll deduct. And that is true. But what I like about the HSA, rather than just paying more in medical premiums, is you're really kind of taking your destiny into your own hands. Because if you pay $600 a month, $700, $800 a month for health insurance, and you don't really go to the doctor that year, you just paid for a bunch of health insurance and you didn't need it.
Yeah.
You didn't need it. And that money is kept. Where if you took a slightly higher deductible plan and, you paid $300 a month and put the other $500 in and you didn't go to the doctor, at the end of the year, you have $6,000 that gets rolled over if you need it later or can be invested for the long term. So, I heard someone say one time when they were in the office, well, it's really only advantageous if I invest it, right? Because otherwise I could just, have it come out of my paycheck. It still wouldn't be taxed. I'm still getting the tax advantage if I go to the doctor. And the investing part of it definitely is an advantage. But again, like I'm saying, if you're someone who pays a lot for health insurance, maybe worth looking at too, to just say, I don't go to the doctor a ton, or, maybe even if we do, we don't have really expensive, we don't take a ton of medications. It really makes sense to me in those scenarios to kind of, honestly, in a sense, get a little bit of money back from, from the insurance companies that you can use in the future. So I'm a huge, huge fan of the HSAs. The only downside that, we've probably brought up before is that you don't want to die with money in an HSA because if it passes to a non-spouse, it is fully taxable in the year that you die. Okay. So I've heard some people, again, say online or on different shows that, maybe younger folks, I'm planning to try to have $1 million in my HSA when I retire. Oh, As a young person, I can say I don't want $1 million in my HSA when I retire, because that might be a little bit harder to use over the course of a lifetime. Maybe you'll use it, maybe you won't. But I think the sweet spot would be, probably having low six figures amounts that, covers maybe some end of life expenses, maybe covers, just eye expenses, dental, things like that. I mean, I can't tell you how many clients come in and have a $20,000 dental bill at some
$20,000 tooth, like a Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. Oh, not that kind of, they're not getting grills. It's medically necessary type of dental work. But so it's a great vehicle. It's definitely very underutilized. And I think it's just hard for people to get over that high deductible in their mind. It just sounds scary.
I have a question.
Real quick, can you hold your question for a second? I need to correct myself. Graham, I think our show's getting out there to the masses, believe it or not, because the number used to be 10% of people were covered by HSA. So while you were going over, don't pass away and all that with the HSA, I pulled some new numbers, and it's actually 18 to 20% in 2024 are now covered by an HSA. So I think our show is finally reaching the masses out there. Because it increased significantly, up almost 30 million people, actually. So it used to be around 10%. And this, by the way, just for clarification, we don't sell HSAs. They aren't something we sell. It's our planning process looks at a lot of really good areas in someone's situation so that we can have conversations with individuals and families about not just HSAs, but all other areas of financial planning as well. And Graham, you're absolutely right. I had made a note while you were talking. I think you cheated and looked on my note sheet as you were. No, I'm just kidding. You definitely don't want to die with an HSA. So when you said that, I had in my head this vision of, go get the doctor. Don't let dad pass away. We're going to keep him on life support. We got to spend more of this money out of this HSA. What can we spend?
You go to HSA.com on the last day of your life and buy, enough soap for the next 15 generations of your family.
Right.
Enough, back massagers and lotion.
All that. Yes.
Yeah. Amazon, load it up.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard of, because it's kind of funny to me when people use the FSA, there are those websites that just have a bunch of HSA, FSA eligible things where, you can just go buy a bunch of like prescription toothpaste and like random stuff.
That's funny.
But you don't really need to do that with HSA unless you're on your deathbed and you're trying to get your money.
Spend it all now. No, we got 2 hours. All right, Louann, sorry.
Well, that's okay. My question did have to do with that though. So let's say you're down to your last parent. Okay. So
it's so funny. We were on the same page, and I was on it in a comical way, and you're being serious.
Yeah. The first spouse has passed.
Yeah.
Okay. The second, so they're still in HSA, I guess. Mm-hmm, and now what happens to that when the kids inherit it? Are they fully taxed too?
Oh no, that's what Graham was saying. If a non-spouse inherits an HSA, they have to pay the taxes in the year of death.
In the year of death. Okay.
Yeah. So like with an IRA, you have like 10 years. Okay. Right. So with an HSA, you have to, in the year they pass, you have to pay the tax.
Got it.
So just real quick, not that this is important, but I just wanted to see what the most expensive thing on the HSA store was. If you're someone out there who has a parent who you don't want to die with an HSA.
Okay.
So you can buy a defibrillator for about $1,700.
Oh, there you go.
So if you got 10,000 sitting in HSA, buy 8 defibrillators, maybe,
that's
defibrillators.
That's That seems cheap, actually.
It actually does seem
It's
cheap.
an at-home one. I mean, you know, it might be like the Temu
Oh, can you-
defibrillator or something. I don't know if you want to use it.
Yeah.
Can you buy those recliners, maybe those lifts? Would that be-
Massage chair.
Yeah.
Is that on there, Graham?
I see a decompression table.
Okay.
There's a massage gun for $600.
Well, okay. Must
There
be
we go.
good.
Those things, the batteries don't last in them very long. So buy about 3
A
or
lot
4
of
of those.
batteries.
Yeah. Shoot, yeah. Then you always got one on charge. The battery runs out. You just grab the other one.
Oh my
That's your
gosh.
inheritance, son.
Uh-huh.
25 massage guns.
Yeah, listen to our show. We will help you exhaust your HSA. HSAstore.com. Is that what it is?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think that's what it's. HSAstore.com.
That's
You know
funny.
what's you know why this is so funny is because none of this none of this is scripted.
Nope.
Like,
You kidding me?
you know, we have the HSA bullets and stuff that we're going to talk about, but all this going to HSAstore.com. Man, that's hilarious, man. That is so funny.
And again, if you're not somebody on your deathbed, don't spend your HSA on random
Don't do
garbage that you don't need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep it because
Don't waste it.
you mentioned dental. I remember my dad telling me that, and he doesn't have an HSA, by the way. But anyway, he spent like $25,000 on a tooth or teeth or something.
My goodness.
It wasn't a grill, as you said.
It wasn't a grill. Good.
It was some teeth repair, and I don't remember exactly what happened. But he was like, "Yeah, it was about $25,000." I was like, "Good grief,
Yeah.
good grief."
Wow.
So,
Man.
Okay. So anything else here you guys want to talk about on?
no, that's
Before we move on?
just kind of recap that. Take a look at where you're saving money. Make sure you're taking advantage of some tax situations and different types of call it buckets as you save up for retirement. Make sure you're hitting those retirement accounts. Hit the Roth IRA. As Graham mentioned, the HSA, you want to be funding that if you have the opportunity to do that. But yeah, that's just all the things that you should be doing in your pre-retirement years for sure.
One more quick thing I'll mention on the Roth before we
Mhm.
move on. Something that people mention a lot, or sometimes when we talk about the Roth, and sometimes I think I can just feel them thinking this is, if you're someone who is saving a lot of money, in a 401k, maybe in a brokerage account, whatnot, it can seem like maybe kind of an inconsequential amount. You're talking about $8,600 if you're over 50, $7,500 if you're under. But, the compounding effect of that over time, I think we just had a little compound interest, projection in here. And even if you were just maxing out a Roth for the last 10 years until retirement, so, putting in, starting out $8,600 or so a month for the last 10 years before retirement, with even just a conservative growth rate, like a 6% or so growth rate, that'd still be over 6 figures. And that's just on one Roth. So if you're talking about a married couple, both doing it, I mean, if you could today say, hey, I want $200,000 more of tax-free income in retirement or tax-free accounts in retirement, I think that's a great way to go. And, you don't feel it quite as much as, having to put in $30,000 in a 401k or something like that. It is a smaller amount, but it does amount to a lot over time. And it helps you kind of not accumulate a bunch more in savings. So I don't think that should not go unnoticed when you're talking about that even though it might be a smaller amount, even if you're a single individual, just 10 years of doing that or so, 6 figures plus of tax-free money in retirement that you can use. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've run into that before where somebody will say, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, no, it does matter. It matters a lot, especially over time and, compounding for sure. So yeah, good stuff.
All right. Well, let's transition then. Let's go to, this is kind of exciting to me, from when we are saving all of our lives for retirement. Then we find ourselves in retirement and now we have to spend that money.
Yeah, it's tough actually. So the transition from saving to spending. So let's talk about that for a quick second. This is something we talk about on the show a lot for the retiree. There's a big psychological impact of retiring, and it just really plays on your psyche pretty hard. So literally before we recorded the show, I just happened to be in the break room, and there's someone in there that I talk to often. She's always at lunch when I go in there to kind of eat my yogurt or something before we record radio, and she'll ask me kind of, how's things going, and what do you think about the market, and just have conversation about that. And one of the things that we had conversation about, it's probably been last summer, something like that. She had started her Social Security. So I said, hey, just think about these things now that you've started your Social Security and you're working, and just think about your tax impacts and all that. And so one of the things she said to me while we were in the break room was, hey, I really appreciate that conversation last year. It really helped out. And, I think I'm going to work a little longer. And I was like, really? And she said, yeah, I just don't want to stop getting my paycheck right now. And I just kind of started snickering a little bit. And she went on to say, hey, I'm just going to work a little longer. I like having the money come in, and I just don't want to give up my paycheck. And I snickered again. I said, I need to explain to you why I'm laughing a little bit. I said, I'm not laughing at you, I promise. I'm just saying that, you know what? I hear this all the time. A lot of people, they're in their high, income earning years, and they don't hate their job. It's probably good for some that they're not at home full time with their spouses, if I'm being honest, and so that psychological impact of shifting from pushing money into savings, as we'd like to say it, to now I got to start pulling it out to live on. And oh yeah, by the way, I no longer have my W-2 income coming anymore, my job, my identity, my purpose currently in life. Now I don't have that. It's all gone away. And now I have to figure out how I'm going to pull money out in a really tax efficient way. And now I'm not putting money in the 401k, watching that account balance grow because I'm funding it. Now I've got to pull out, and now it could drop if the market doesn't behave. It's tough, Louann, that transition, that psychological transition. That is big for a lot of people. We call it the retirement rhythm on the show. It just takes a while to get into that retirement rhythm because you've been in that rhythm of life and working for 25, 30, 35 years, 40, 45 in some cases. And now you're being asked to give all that up. And I kind of think it's like jumping out of an airplane, and just you're hoping that the parachute opens up, right? So you're like, I'm going to jump and
so scary.
Pull this ripcord. I've never done it. I never will. There's not enough money in the world to have me jump out of a perfectly good flying airplane. For hoping a little sack on my back opens up, I'm just not going to do it, And so, right. So that's the way I kind of think about it in retirement. It's like you're going to go into retirement. You're going to say adios to your job, and you're going to pull the ripcord on the retirement thing and just hope that the parachute opens up. That's the way it feels.
No, I'm sure it does. And that is a scary feeling because we rely so much on our paychecks. One thing I like to bring up to people, though, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about how, they're just nervous, same thing, about turning off that paycheck, saying it comes in, it's steady, I can budget for it, it's easy. And so we kind of took a look at, what's their net income. So salary probably around $150,000 a year, but after taxes, deductions, things like that, just ended up being like $3,000 every other week. So, we're talking about just under $6,000 a month. And, looking at their Social Security, looking at their other, pension income sources and what they could draw off their portfolio, it's like, hey, you could easily draw $6,000, $7,000, maybe $7,500 off of this per month. And that kind of blew their mind a little bit because the notion was, I'm making $150,000 a year right now. When I retire, it's going to feel like I'm making so much less money. And for some people it will. If you make, $500,000 a year, there's a good chance you're not going to be generating $500,000 of retirement income.
Yeah.
Unless you saved really, really, really well. But in this case, if you really break it down, there's a lot of stuff that goes away in retirement. Your 401k contributions. So if you make $150K a year, but you're putting in $32,000, you really only have $120 after that. Also, taxes, all that income is fully taxable, and you have Social Security and Medicare taxes. You got FICA taxes. Yeah. So that's another like 7.65%. So if you're in Alabama, 20% federal, maybe 5% state, 7.6, you can be 30% in taxes right there too. So you might be making $150,000, but if you're actually taking home $70,000 a year, or $80,000 a year, whatever it ends up being, you aren't living like you're making $150,000, which is good. Which I hope that you're not spending every dollar that comes in. But I think people have this notion that I make $150 now, I have to make $150 to live the same lifestyle in retirement, and you really should look more at what your net paycheck is, what your income that you're actually bringing in is, rather than that kind of gross number. Because for most people, when you break it down, again, with after taxes, after maxing out 401k, your Social Security plus some withdrawals will probably get you pretty close to that number, unless you're, like I said, a very, very high income earner. So I think that surprises a lot of people when they see it, just because conventional wisdom would tell you, in order to live the same lifestyle you live today, you have to make the same amount of money you live today. But it's a different phase of life. It's not about saving money anymore. And people don't really think of saving money as an expense, but it kind of is. I mean, it's money that you're making, but you're not spending, or that is not sitting, it's not spending money. So it is kind of, in a way, an expense on your budget. So if you cut that out of your life, hey, I'm not having to save anymore. It's all about distribution. That's a big swing for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Graham. And actually, this morning I was doing a Zoom with someone, and he didn't really budget, and he couldn't really tell me, like what his monthly expenses was. And so basically I said, hey, let's just talk about net income for a second. Tell me biweekly what you're getting. I think it was like $3,100. And so like $6,200 a month, essentially. So I said, when you are receiving this after all your taxes and everything, this is what hits your bank account. Is this kind of your life? Is this what you're living life on and enjoying and doing things on? He said, yeah, this works for me. I said, so theoretically, we just need to recreate income of like $6,200 a month. And if we do that, you should be good. Is that right? He said, yeah, absolutely. That sounds fair to me. And so that's a great way to look at it. I also want to mention something else, because you were kind of backing off the retirement plan contributions, the FICA, the federal, the state, all that stuff. When you did that, it reminded me of like the rules of thumb shows that we've done before. And the 80% rule is probably one of the only rules that I kind of like, and I think that for most people, unless you're making like $400,000 a year, is pretty accurate. So I do like the 80% rule, because if you're contributing, like 10 or 15% to a 401k, and you back off the FICA and you back off the other taxes, you're still going to have some taxes in retirement. Don't get me wrong, but it kind of comes close to that 80% rule in a lot of cases. So that's one of the rules I do like. So Louann, this has been a fun show so far. I know we're almost through the first half of the show. And what's kind of crazy is we had that little power glitch right in the middle of this first segment. So for those of you who are listening to the show, don't understand what we just went through with a little power glitch here while recording, and the Wi-Fi kicking out. And I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to have to like scrap the show because it was so fun on the front half? Yeah. And the HSA and all that. So this has been really enjoyable. And if you're catching this show on the way to church, like we always say, you can always hop out to Apple Podcast, Spotify platforms. You can pick up the whole show. And I would encourage you to do that, because in the back half of the show, we're going to talk about some Social Security stuff, some bucket planning to kind of help you reduce risk as you start retirement. Our number is 256-937-2010. If you want to call and set up a discovery session with our office, you can do that by calling 256-937-2010.
Planning for retirement often sparks big questions, like how to make your savings last, or what steps you should take next. Instead of stressing, why not get clear direction with a personalized meeting? Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's text VISIT to 256-937-2010. Connect with Cris Wallace and discover the next chapter of your financial story.
Are you a federal employee feeling pressure from the early retirement offers like VERA, VSIP, or the Deferred Resignation Program? Recent government initiatives have introduced significant changes to federal retirement programs, making employees feel pressured to consider early retirement or face potential layoffs. At WG Financial Group, we help guide federal employees through these uncertain times. Our team understands the complex federal retirement systems and can help you make informed decisions. Call 256-937-2010 to schedule your complimentary discovery session with us today. We'll help you assess your options and create a personalized retirement plan to help you feel more confident. Visit WGFinancialGroup.com or call 256-937-2010 to book your session. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
When headlines sound dramatic and markets appear restless, having a plan in place matters. Joining forces with Cris Wallace could offer fresh perspectives on how to adapt your approach while staying focused on long-term goals. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's text VISIT to 256-937-2010. Explore how steady guidance makes a difference.
And we thank you so much for spending time with us today. I'm Louann Fulmar. I am here with Cris Wallace. He's president of WG Financial Group, a certified financial planner, financial advisor. And then, of course, we have Graham Bauer, also a certified financial planner, financial advisor, and an enrolled agent at the firm. So they are here giving us some great information on, what we need to be doing pre-retirement. And now we're heading into retirement. So again, you're listening to the Rite Retirement Show. And okay, so let's move to Social Security. Social Security claiming strategies and anything related to that. You were talking earlier, Cris, about somebody who had decided they were going to claim their Social Security and then continue to work. For me, I've told you I am coming up on my full retirement age, which will be 66 in 10 months. I'm not working full time, but part time. So I do continue to work as well. So anyway, I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about some claiming options.
Yeah. So Graham and I'll do a little back and forth on this one. I'll kind of start us off with just some basic information. So I know that we pick up new listeners each week. And so we just want to kind of cover some basics here. So right now, if you're born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age, FRA is what we call it at the office. You're born in 1960 or later, 67 is your FRA. And you can claim Social Security as early as 62 and actually as early as 60 if you're a widow or widower. Mm-hmm. But we'll stay with the basics for most people. 62 would be the earliest most could claim. But if you do that, and we've talked about this a number of times on the show, is you take a 30% cut in benefit when you do that. So there's several things that you want to consider when claiming Social Security. Both Graham and I believe that Social Security should be a data-driven decision and not an emotional decision. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about claiming benefit at 62. If you wait until 70, which actually I was talking about the call this morning on the first half of the show that I'd done a Zoom call. This particular individual actually was a single individual. He was still working. He still loved his job. And he said, hey, I want to just wait until I'm 70 because I'm going to continue to work and I might as well max out my benefit because if I do that, it's going to cover about 75% of my expenses. So I'm just going to wait until 70. So the benefits of waiting until 70 is you get 8% a year growth on your Social Security, plus any cost of living. So you could get in some years 10, 11, 12% in some cases growth on the Social Security. So waiting makes a big difference. And then also kind of going back to claiming early, you do have to pay attention to the earnings test if you're working. So let's say that you claimed, at 62 and you were going to continue to work. And let's just say you made $30,000 and they go off your gross income, by the way, just FYI. So let's say you're making $30,000 a year. Well, everything over $24,480 in 2026 is going to get held. $1 for every $2 is going to get withheld for over that amount. So you want to keep that in mind. And in that particular case, unless you just have to have extra money, like we're telling you don't claim. Like as long as you're working and you might as well let your benefit grow. Mm-hmm. And then for the high income earner, if you make more than $184,500 in 2026, for every dollar over that you make, you do not pay into Social Security. So let's say you hit that threshold in, September, just say, for example, then what's going to happen is you're going to get a 6.2% raise back into your paycheck because you're no longer paying into the Social Security portion at that point. So, but that's what we do for Medicare anyway. We pay into that no matter how much money we make. So just kind of make any sense. But anyway, I don't want to get on that tangent. No. We'll stay with the Social Security claiming strategies.
One thing that kind of occurred to me as you were saying that I've never put this two and two together. One thing that you hear over and over and over again is, if I could just have that 7.65%, maybe get my employer side too, and I could just invest that, I'm going to, beat Social Security. I'm going to have so much more. So I don't think people are aware. There's a lot of people in the country that make over 184, and after that point, they don't pay into Social Security in that amount over.
Shut your mouth. You shut your mouth. You're telling on
people. Most of those people aren't saving that extra 6.2% that they save. You know, that's just kind of gravy to most people. So, anyways, I'm not trying to start anything with any high income earners out there, but most people are just not going to do it. So I'm grateful for Social Security. But one other thing on the earnings test, and I was having a conversation with somebody about this the other day. I honestly think it is a great thing to work a little bit in retirement if you want to, if it gives you life, if it's something that is fun. So I think sometimes people have the misconception that I can't work at all if I'm on Social Security. You retire at 63 and, you know, you collect your benefit early maybe, and you're like, I can't work at all. I don't want to pay the penalty. Well, if there's something you can do part-time, make a little extra money, you have a decent bit of room. I mean, part-time jobs look different. Some people go back as a contractor for a company they used to work for. That's more of a like high dollar part-time job. But we have a lot of clients who have just done really basic, simple things that they just enjoy, working
Lowe's
at
Home Depot.
Yeah, working at Lowe's. That's the classic example. Mowing grass at a golf course, or heck, I have a few clients that have driven some DoorDash, and or like I think maybe it's the one for groceries actually. But either way, they kind of like doing it. It's kind of fun for them. It gets them out of the house, keeps them active. It's like, hey, I mean, maybe you don't have to have the money, but if you make another $15,000, $18,000, it's not going to affect your Social Security, at all from that perspective. And it's a little extra income to do some fun things. So don't let that discourage you, I guess, for doing a little part-time work if you want to. I don't want to, force people into working, but if they like it, that's good.
Yeah. I couldn't do DoorDash, Graham. I'd be too tempted to eat French fries.
You can have some of those fries.
Fry.
They'd fire me like after the first day. Like, I got my bag, but it was open.
Yeah.
Yep. It's because your fries smelled amazing, and I wanted a couple.
When me and Emma, my now wife, were in high school, like not long after.
I like how you call her your now wife. You
my
say
now wife.
Then girlfriend, now wife.
Yeah.
We used to do this thing on weekends where sometimes we'd say, let's go drive DoorDash for like 3 or 4 hours and, make enough money to go on like a date somewhere because we were both broke. And I remember this one time distinct. I obviously never mess with anybody's food or anything like that. I throw that out on the surface. But there was this one time we were so hungry. We had done it 3 or 4 hours and somebody had us pick up this Cheesecake Factory order.
Oh, dear.
Oh my gosh. They got every kind of cheesecake.
What?
It was hard to be in that car and just be smelling the Italian food. So yeah, it can be tough sometimes.
If I had driven that order, they would have got every kind of cheesecake except one.
Well, so
-1.
Okay, so the funny thing is actually about that, we forgot one of them at the restaurant. So they probably thought that's what happened initially because they were missing one and we had to go back. It was a whole thing. They got their cheesecake eventually. I didn't eat it.
Oh my gosh.
But they probably thought, man, this kid just ate my cheesecake.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, but
you did, but you didn't.
Well, let's get into the tax efficiency, Graham, of Social Security. That's one of the claiming related strategies that we want to cover today.
Yeah, the tax efficiency side of Social Security, I think, is really crucial, and is another reason that, when I said earlier in the show, when you're working and you're making $150K a year, you're probably not living on $150K a year. Another thing is when you got Social Security, it's just going to be taxed less. So making $60,000 of W-2 income versus $60,000 or $40,000 or whatever of Social Security, it's going to be taxed differently. So your net amount from those two things is going to look very different. So Social Security at most can be taxed. 85% of it can be subject to tax. So if you were, to make these numbers really easy on myself, if you were bringing in $10,000 a year, the max that could be subject to your ordinary income tax is $8,500. The other $1,500 would, be tax free. So it's a very, very tax efficient income source. And, the thresholds of that are based on your other income. So it's kind of a complicated calculation. But if you had no other income, just Social Security, you wouldn't pay any tax on it.
Right.
And if you have a lot of other income, you'll pay, maximum 85% of it will be subject to tax. But that just either way, you're going to be bringing in more net income from that source than you would from a pension or from IRA withdrawals or from your W-2 income. So it is a bit more tax efficient in that way. You know, it's funny. One thing during CFP training that they talked about that I thought was kind of funny, the thresholds for Social Security being taxed have not been inflation adjusted since I think like 1982.
It's in the early 80s.
Oh
Or
my
something
gosh.
like that. So, you know, folks in the 80s had the same income thresholds that people have today. So over time, with them not adjusting that, it means that for a lot of people, Social Security will be taxable in some way, shape, or form. But usually, unless you have a lot of other income sources, maybe you're Roth converting, pulling a lot of other income, it will probably be at much lower rates than you're used to.
Mm-hmm. What's funny is that I like to ask the trick question to families is like, if you have $60,000 of Social Security income and that's it, that's the only income you have, you know, what tax bracket are you in? And they're like, I don't know, the 12, the 22, whatever. No, you're 0 if that's your only source of income. Because a lot of people don't really know that. They think about the provisional income brackets where over 44,000 is taxed at up to 85%. And that's why when you're claiming, you have to think about the tax efficiency of Social Security, because as Graham noted, up to 85% can be taxed. That means 15% of that is free from federal tax. And if you're in Alabama or Tennessee has no state tax. Alabama doesn't tax Social Security. So now you got all of that state tax that's gone as well. But that whole provisional income situation comes into play when you claim early for Social Security. You take the 30% less. And then you need more income to satisfy monthly living expenses. And now you're having to pull out of an IRA. And now you're pulling more out of the IRA than you would have had to pull if you would have just taken Social Security a little bit later and used a strategy there. So I think you do have to think about the taxation of Social Security. That is like, for me, it's like 1A and 1B. And the next one we'll talk about is the spousal protection, aspect of it. So, what happens is when you're both husband and wife are claiming Social Security and the husband passes away, for example, the wife is going to keep the higher of the two Social Security. So it could be hers, it could be his. At the end of the day, there's going to be the lowest one is going to go away. You said it best, Graham. I can't remember. It was about a year ago. I loved it, actually, and I've never forgot it. And I've used it on many, many TV episodes and radio episodes. But, treat it like a game. Like, I want to beat Social Security. It's like, how are you going to know if you're going to beat it or not? Because you're going to be dead anyway. Like, you're going to die and you're going to have your fist raised in the air in the casket. I beat Social Security.
Defeated Social Security.
I died at 77.
Yeah. That's, if you like collect later and pass away early, they're going to put it on your tombstone. Graham lost his battle to Social Security.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a very multifaceted decision. That's not just looking at one thing or another. But I mean, but between that and between the massive standard deduction that you got right now, especially if you're over age 65, it's like you are in such a good place if you have a big Social Security benefit. Oh my
gosh, yes.
I mean, if you're, and this is probably some people listening, if you're like a married couple who have both been working for a long time and you collected at 67 or later, I mean, you're rolling in it on a net income basis with Social Security. If you're bringing in, I've seen people that are bringing in, $60,000 to $80,000 a year between the two of them. And, that's your only income source. That could be a lot of money tax-free to come in just on your Social Security before counting anything else as well. So it's a super important decision, super important benefit. And I think it gets a bad rap a lot of times. And, I agree, we got to fix the solvency and everything like that. But it really is such a big part of so many people's retirement.
Yeah, I totally agree there, Graham. I mean, I think when you think about Social Security, there's a selfish aspect of it to some regard. I've heard a husband and wife say, well, it's your benefit, you should claim. And I'm like, no. Let's talk about the family situation first. And then let me lay this out. And then you guys can make the decision, however you want to do that. So just another statistic too, as we talk about break evens and longevity and spousal protection, income protection, all that stuff. when a 65-year-old couple is age 65, so obviously when a 65-year-old couple is age 65, when they reach age 65, there's nearly a 1 in 2% chance that one of them sees age 90. And I think that we get hung up on the average age of death is 78 because we've heard that, like that drum, beat for so many years. But that is when a newborn baby, girl and boy, when they're born, the average age is 78. But as you age up, and like I said earlier, if you get to age 65, those mortality tables start to shift a little bit. And, at age 65, I think a male's average life expectancy at that point is like another 15 or 18 years or something like that. It's early 80s, let's put it that way. And the wife is a little bit longer by a year or two. But when they're both 65, there's a good chance one of them sees age 90. So I think you have to think about that when you're looking at the break-even analysis on Social Security, because it doesn't always tell you the whole picture. It really tells you the math, and anybody can do math. But what the spreadsheet doesn't take into account, or the tax ramifications of it, and the spousal protection. And I think at the office, when we're building out financial plans and we're working with families, we're always trying to make sure that we protect that lower income spouse, because I've heard this too many times. Well, Cris, she's going to get mine. Yeah, she's going to get yours. That's exactly right. And she's going to lose hers. Right. And if hers is $2,000, that's $2,000 that she's lost. And in my book, that's a neighborhood change in some cases. And, the other thing I hear is, oh, it's no big deal. She's got the house. She's got the house, Cris. Like trying to convince me, like, look, you need to look to your right and look at her and tell her she's got the house that she's going to have to sell because maybe she didn't have enough assets. And, now she's grieving, because you've passed away, and now she's got to fire sell the house, put it on, Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and sell it quickly while trying to grieve and make all these financial decisions. I mean, that's what people come to see us. We've had so many people come in the past couple of years where, they were kind of doing it themselves. And of course, there was some things that, we've always been able to kind of find some things. Okay, probably do this a little bit better. But the main reason was, I want to have a relationship with somebody. I'm willing to work with you and work with your firm so that I can relax. And then if something happens to me, I want to know that somebody's going to be there for our spouse. So, they know that we have that, attitude at the office is we want to make sure that we protect both of you. But man, when one of you's gone, we want to make sure that you're both protected.
Yes, I love that. That's so cool. I mean, you guys definitely do that. It's something that you work on, and you have a passion for it. I know you love your clients, and that's what you look out for both of them.
Yeah, and I want to say something else, Louann. It's not just me and Graham. I mean, we have an amazing staff. Like, our team is amazing. We have some certified financial planners that are females. They're awesome. Like, they're so awesome. I love having them in the office and the dynamic that they bring. And they just bring a different, thing to the table that, males can't always bring. So they're awesome. And I don't know if I said this before, but we updated our website like 6 months ago. It looks awesome. So if you haven't been to our website in a while, you've been listening to the show, go check it out, man. It's amazing. It looks awesome. We got new branded colors, still the same WG, just got some new colors going on. It looks awesome. So yeah, just a little plug for the website right there.
Okay. Well, let's move on then to the bucket approach. Okay. Talking about retirement portfolio management.
Yeah, we're not talking about kicking the bucket.
No.
Right. Okay.
Or a bucket list. Yeah.
Yeah. I
guess it's sort of a bucket.
Sort of a bucket.
Or a hole in the bucket, right? Remember that song? There's a hole in my bucket. No, not that one either.
I don't remember that song.
Oh, it's a kindergarten song. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Can you sing it for us?
You don't want me to.
Okay.
I could, but no, let's not go there.
You don't want me to. The listeners don't want me to.
No.
All right. I love it, Louann. I love having you on the show. So awesome. All right. Let's talk about a bucket strategy. So this is where, and we've used this on and off for certain people, and it works for some, doesn't work for all. So using the bucket strategy. So we think that the most critical years of your retirement are probably the last 5 of your working years and probably the first 7 to 10 of your retirement years. And when I say that, I say most critical, you don't want to take a big loss late in your retirement, or you might be working longer than you want. And if you're retired, you've already, hung up the work boots and you're off into retirement. You don't want to take a big loss early in retirement. especially when you're starting to pull money out. So the first bucket we would say would kind of be something that would cover you really good for the first at least 5 years. We kind of lean more towards seven, sometimes as many as 10 years. So you want to have a nice safe bucket that you can pull money from that's little to no volatility, that can help you cover the cost of, just living expenses that you're going to have, and maybe pull money for travel. And what that does is that protects you from having to sell depressed assets. So if the stock market falls, you're not having to sell stock positions and, replenish income needs from assets that have fallen in value. So that would kind of be your first bucket. I love that. I think a lot of people that we work with also love that as well, knowing that they have some money in a position where they can pull from and not have to sell, volatile assets. Your bucket 2 would be kind of like that 7 to 10 year plus type of bucket, where it could be a little bit higher risk. You're not going to need it for 7 to 10 years, and it can be a little bit more aggressive. And then your long-term bucket, kind of longer than 10 years, definitely probably won't need it. It might end up, passing on to the children at some point. That would be kind of bucket 3, and that could be a lot more aggressive at that point because you're not really expected to need it, I would say. So that's kind of the bucket approach. I think for people, when we talk about it in those terms, it makes sense. It makes sense to think about, and there's a behavioral term for this, Graham, and I don't remember exactly what it's called.
I think like mental accounting would be the term, where you kind of sometimes it's looked at as a negative thing of looking at all of your money as, separate buckets. But there are use cases for that for sure.
Yeah. So I think it works. It makes sense. It kind of simplifies things when you think about it. In the short-term bucket, the average return, I'd probably say somewhere around 4 to 5% in that range. Medium-term bucket, you're probably looking at more like 6.5, and then long-term bucket, that's your equities and the growth. And, if the market does well, I don't know, it could be, 7 plus at that point. Just depends on what time frame you retire in and how those returns happen. And I think using this bucket strategy, especially with that first bucket, you don't have to sell stocks that are down. That really reduces and sometimes can eliminate the sequence of return risk. So we all know that over time, there's enough data out there, but over like 100-year time frame, the market's going to return around 10% on average. But the last time I checked, most people don't have a 100-year time frame in retirement. It's usually 25 to 30-year time horizon. So I'll try to paint the picture. So you've got 25 to 30 years, and we just don't know what the returns are going to be in that segment of time that you're going to be retired. So if the market falls off and you're pulling money, that can introduce something called sequence of returns. So let's take for an example, if you retired in, I don't know, like 1999, would have been a good year to retire. Your accounts are up big time. And you're like, hey, man, we just came out of the .com, 90s where everything is roaring. And then 2000, 2001, 2002, all 3 negative years. So think about the psychology and how you would have felt. Like if you're getting ready to retire out there today and you're thinking about calling us, just think about how you would feel if you retired in 2026 and 2027, 8, and 9 were all negative.
Be
just
awful.
Think about that for a second.
Yeah,
okay.
awful.
That would be bad enough. And then we go through a few positive years in the middle 2000s, and then we have 08, the second worst financial crisis, on record. And all of a sudden the market drops again, and then of course it starts to bounce back. So if your retirement started out with the first 10 years of your retirement with virtually no returns, flat, with that kind of volatility, that's what you want to protect yourself against. I mean, I don't think that would happen in most cases. I think that's kind of a rare case. But with you only having the opportunity to do retirement one time, I do think you have to think about protecting yourself in a way that if something close to that happened, or we saw a recession in the first 1 or 2 years of your retirement, using that bucket strategy could kind of help you out there. So, Graham, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that, but we've used that quite a bit and it seems to help.
We definitely have. And I think for most folks that we're working with, more of it comes down to them having probably a short-term and a long-term bucket. The midterm one, I don't know that we always go as far as to say, we're going to have money that's for 5 years out or 7 years out in the future, whatever. But I think that short-term bucket, especially early in retirement, is really good to have, to be able to say, hey, I know I have the money that I'm going to need, especially, let's say you got a bridge to Social Security for a couple of years.
Yeah.
One thing that I have a lot of conversations with people about when we're looking at the data is they want to delay Social Security, and we kind of look at their plan and we say, okay, well, you can do that, but I just want you to be aware you're going to be withdrawing 8 to 10% off your portfolio for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And your plan can support that because after those 2 or 3 years, you're on Social Security, that withdrawal rate drops way, 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 way down, and it can support that. But you got to understand that balance might go down a little bit. If we have a negative year in there, you're still going to need to withdraw that money.
Right.
So especially for those type of people, it can be really comforting to know, hey, let's just pull from something more stable, from a more, secure, shorter term kind of asset rather than, being at the mercy of the stock market. Because right now, especially as we're on 3 back-to-back really good years,
Yes.
I would say like confidence is probably at a relative high in the last 20 years of market performance.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm bearish or anything like that. I'm just saying that, it's volatile. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, exactly. There's so many different factors that could happen. So you don't just want to plan on, hey, it's been a great 3 years. That's going to keep up forever.
Or because so-and-so's in office, it's going to keep up.
Yeah. I mean,
you can't bank on that.
You can't bank on that. You got to have something more secure than that, a more concrete plan. So I think that you want to make sure that if you're withdrawn for a couple of years, a high percentage, and if the market was down a little bit, like, can your portfolio sustain that?
Yeah. I want to make an analogy here. So I don't speed. I don't make a habit of driving fast. So those of you in the Huntsville, Madison area catching the show that are cops, I drive the speed limit most of the time. I use my cruise control a lot, but there have been times that I've been on the interstate 65 and I, see a cop. And I know I'm not speeding because I've got the cruise on. I hope I'm right here. I usually do about 5 over on the interstates with the cruise.
And it's about average.
I'm just waiting for a police officer to call me and say, "Oh, you're safe," or "Don't do that." Anyway, I usually do about 5 over, but I know I'm not speeding. And I know the officer's probably not going to pull out and pull me over at that point. But what's the first thing I do? I always look down at my odometer and see how fast I'm going. A lot of times I'll touch my brake, just tap my brake, not slam on, but just maybe now I'm, not doing 5 over. Now I'm like 2 or 3 below. So I slow down a little bit and I'm like, oh, okay, good. Ooh, I'm safe. And the no blue lights come on. And the further away I get from the police officer that was in the median or whatever, the heavier my foot becomes. And I go back to 5 over on the speed limit and set the cruise control. That's recency bias. So while I was close to that police officer sitting in that median, I was really afraid of that. And the further I got away from that, I tend to forget about the cop, at that point pulling out. That's what's happened here with like 08, and then what you just mentioned has happened in the last few years of the market. When 08 happened, people were scared for a long time because it was a gnarly downturn. And so you had people sitting in cash for years. And now all of a sudden they're afraid to get back in. What you just described was we've had 3 really good years and people are remembering that and they think that that's normal. And because that's what I remember recently, and so-and-so's in office and things are going to continue. What we're here to tell you is if you need someone to review your financial plan and, set up a plan for you and your family, that's what we do at the office every single day. You can start that process by giving us a call, 256-937-2010. Our phone number again for a discovery session is 256-937-2010. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate. Give us a call. Hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
Please remember, converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. An increase in taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.
Graham Bauer holds the enrolled agent designation, but is not currently offering tax preparation services. Neither the firm nor its agents may give tax advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any purchasing decisions.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisory requirements. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. WG Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial. This radio show is a paid placement.